Welcome to the December 5th, 2011 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the review and approval of minutes for the November 7th, 2011 meeting.
Should we make it official that A is a voting member support for all purposes?
There he is.
Start over again. Good.
Saved by the bell.
Sorry, Mike. We didn't think you'd let us have all the fun.
Sorry?
We didn't think you'd let us have all the fun.
We just did the Pledge of Allegiance.
No, apologize for being late.
Did you want to go back from the beginning, or all we've done is the Pledge of Allegiance?
We've opened the meeting,
We're being recorded, so.
Okay,
not televised, but recorded.
let's plow straight ahead.
Okay.
We need to make Pia an official voting member.
Yes,
We haven't done
okay. And we still have to do the minutes.
that. That is correct.
Correct.
And you have your
And
change.
we're supposed to speak up if possible.
Yes.
These
Okay,
microphones are
where's the,
not-
oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one right there.
Okay. We'll do our best. I'm a little bit late, did you take over all my space?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that. Get away from me. Okay, let's entertain a motion for the review, for the approval of the minutes of 11/7/11. We get a motion, then we'll talk about any changes that need to be made.
I'll make a motion, we accept the minutes as revised for the email revisions.
Second that.
Further discussion, further changes to the minutes of the November 7th meeting? Seeing no comments, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's anonymous. And the next order of business is the second reading of amendments. We're going to go slightly out of order from the agenda, but we'll get this done first. Second reading of amendments to rules and procedures reflecting the recent legislative changes regarding alternate members. And the proposal under consideration is to delete the current language under members and alternates. This is in the Zoning Board of Adjustment bylaws. And replace it with the following. Regular and alternate members. The number of alternate members shall be appointed as provided by the local legislative body in the town charter. Regular members are expected to attend every meeting of the board to exercise their duties and responsibilities. Any member who is unable to attend a meeting or disqualified from participating in a particular case shall notify the chairperson as soon as possible. Alternate members are encouraged to attend all meetings to familiarize themselves with the workings of the board and to stand ready to serve whenever regular members of the board are unable to fulfill his or her responsibilities. And then add an entirely new paragraph captioned participation. All regular and alternate members who are present at a meeting of the board will sit on the board and participate in the hearing and discussion of all matters to come before the board unless disqualified from participation in accordance with RSA 673:14. All regular and alternate members sitting on the board will be entitled to vote on procedural business of the board, such as the adoption of rules and the election of officers. All regular members sitting on the board will act as voting members when considering an appeal. Prior to the hearing of an appeal, the chairperson will designate an alternate to act as a voting member in the place of any regular members who may be absent or disqualified. The board members who participate as voting members in the initial public hearing of an appeal will, when available, participate as voting members in all subsequent hearings, deliberations, and decisions pertaining to that appeal. And then the last subparagraph under meetings will be deleted.
That's great.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the amendment.
I move that we approve the amendment as read twice now.
Second Bob's motion.
Further discussion?
Just number 4.
Yes, sir.
The way I understand it then, the alternate will follow through with the application. If the application takes 2 or 3 meetings, the alternate and the regular member will step aside and the alternate will continue, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding is that once the alternate is sitting as a voting member on the application, then they will stick with it.
And the regular member will back off?
Well,
At least for that application.
for that
For that
application.
application, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
For
Okay.
voting purposes.
I think that's sensible.
No, I agree, because, that, yep.
That's a very good question, but that's what makes sense.
Yes.
To me, that's what makes sense.
Yes, I do. It does to me, too. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, yes.
Yeah, and frankly, most of the time when we have somebody not participating, it's because they have a conflict, so they'd be disqualified anyway. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Welcome.
Thank you.
You used to be part of the solution, and now you're part of the problem. Okay, the first order of regular business is Acadia Engineers and Constructors, public hearing for a special exception, reference 2.02B2 of the Newmarket zoning ordinance. The applicant requests a special exception to permit multi-family residential use on this lot in the M2 zone. The lot is located at 13 Water Street, tax map U3, lot 4, in the M2 zone. And for the record, Mr. O'Connell is not present and is recused due to a conflict. So our newest alternate member will be sitting in this application. Sir?
Okay. Should I be near the mic or?
I think if, wherever you stand, if you can keep your voice high, that would be very helpful for the nice lady who's going to type up the minutes.
Okay. Thanks to the board for convening again tonight. Appreciate it. So the first application that I'll go through is for the special exception.
And for the record, you are Timothy Nichols.
Timothy Nichols, yes.
Yes, special exception, we'll take the special exception up first, thank you.
Okay. I'm just flipping to the narrative that's provided as an addendum or amendment to the application. And in the first part of that, essentially, I excerpted part of the bylaws for the M2 district as it relates to residential use, multifamily residential use. And there are 2 conditions required to permit the special exception for multifamily residential in M2. First exception is preparation and acceptance by the ZBA of a fiscal impact statement, which in addition to analyzing general impacts, assesses school impacts in particular. And then the second condition is preparation and acceptance by the ZBA of a market analysis, demonstrating the feasibility of added multifamily housing in a community which already has an overabundance of multifamily housing, sufficient to ensure reasonable expectation of ongoing occupancy of units to support maintenance and upkeep of the property. So the first condition I'll address, there's 2 parts to that. The first is the general fiscal impacts, and the second part is the school fiscal impacts. General fiscal impacts. There are no general impacts that will increase the fiscal liability of the town. Because the utility services to the site have been modernized, there are no no necessary improvements to sanitary, stormwater, water, or electrical. The activities associated with the construction will not interfere or impede with local commerce. On-site parking will be provided for all residents. So there will be no increase in parking demand or congestion on Main Street. The cost liability for public safety services will decrease with the removal of an abandoned and unsafe building that poses a fire hazard and currently provides a place of refuge for illicit activities. The proposed building will benefit the town and community in several ways, including increased tax revenues. It will revitalize an urban property that has remained abandoned for several years, and the residential units will provide new consumers to the downtown businesses and retail stores. Considering the proximity of the development within the downtown area, residents of the multifamily units will have safe and convenient pedestrian access to the small retail businesses and restaurants on Main Street. This ultimately benefits the Newmarket economy and community. So that's the first part, the first condition, general condition. And then the second part, school fiscal impacts. The target buyers for the multifamily condominium units are young professionals aged 25 to 35 and older adults aged 50 to 70. Young professionals commonly purchase a condominium unit as their first home and then move into a larger single-family home as they have school-aged children. Older adults commonly purchase a condominium unit after the children have left home and they approach retirement. It is well documented that the density of school-aged children in multifamily housing is substantially less than single-family housing. And then I've got 4 reports that I was able to take some relevant information from, and those are all highlighted. Would you like me to read those off? Or?
No, sir. I think you should assume that we've read this.
Okay.
But if there's points that you want to emphasize or bring particular emphasis to, please feel free to draw those out.
Okay. All right. So essentially the summary of all the available information, including a recent multifamily market outlook prepared by the U.S. Census Bureau, demographic and school enrollment trends in New Hampshire, prepared by the New Hampshire Housing Authority this year, actually in October of this year, and the Newmarket School District enrollment projections. They all support that multifamily housing, particularly units with 5 or more, or buildings with 5 or more units, have a very low density of school-aged children.
The data you've shown us here is statewide. Is that correct?
Yes, this is New Hampshire public school enrollment. In the first figure,
I mean, I see a reference to Newmarket specific data, but I don't see it. Was the Newmarket, the number of children coming from multi-residential developments consistent with what you saw statewide?
yes.
Carry on. Thank you.
So, based on the American Community Survey completed by the American Census Bureau, using data from 2005 to 09, they determined that there's a density of 0.17 school-aged children per unit in multi-family residential with 5 or more units in the building. So if we take that data and correlate it to the proposed development, looking at table 1 on page 3, we've got 4 2-bedroom units proposed, and 3 3-bedroom units proposed. So based on the density provided in the first figure, that yields a total of 7 units and 2 school-aged children, just under 2 school-aged children for the whole development. Okay, and then just summarizing fiscal impacts. Adding multifamily residential to the proposed mixed-use development will not result in increased financial liabilities to the town. The inherent benefits are substantial, including net increased tax revenue, increased commerce, and a more vibrant community. And the second condition is the market analysis. this analysis was completed to ensure that the housing need exists for the multifamily units in the town of Newmarket, and to establish reasonable expectation that the properties will remain occupied and will be satisfactorily maintained and upkept. Figure 3 shows all of the multifamily units that were listed on MLS in November, late November, at the time we put this together. We narrowed that to the downtown corridor, which includes the M1 and M2 districts.
Mr. Nichols, I was a little confused by this. Were you looking at condominiums only? I mean, I was confused between multifamily units and condominiums.
All multifamily units.
So this is all multifamily units that are for sale, or buildings that contain, that what? Buildings that are used multifamily that are currently for sale, regardless of whether it's a condominium.
Right. We didn't look at a complex. We looked at individual units that were for sale.
Okay. Okay.
And
Make sure we're going to apples to apples.
we developed a matrix just to determine if there was a need for the type of unit that we have proposed. And some of the factors that we used were obviously the district location within the downtown corridor, waterfront, water views, and high performance, or a green, sustainable building that uses substantially less energy than existing buildings. And based on the units on the market at that time, there really are no other units that have all the characteristics that we are proposing. So we propose that there is a market need for this type of development, residential units.
You're looking at a price point of between $350,000 and $450,000 per unit.
Yes. Okay, the second part of condition number 2 is market sustainability. So here, the intention was to determine if the market would sustain the units and ensure they continue to be viable housing properties for the foreseeable future. So considering that the units are uniquely characteristic,
I'm a little confused by the table. What's the table represent? Yes, no, no, yes? Different towns? The headers over some of those categories are...
Can you explain what the columns represent? I understand.
The
You have
towns.
Dates.
Dates and towns.
And you have towns, then I assume that's bedrooms.
oh, you're looking at table 3.
Table
Yes.
3, yes.
Okay.
What do the other columns represent?
Table 3, this was a market vacancy report for Rockingham County. I'm not sure what the 3rd, 4th, and 5th columns are. But essentially, this is a listing. I assume those are the quantity. The 3rd column, I'm assuming, is the quantity of units. I'm not sure what the yes and no columns are, but essentially, this tells you if there are any units that are currently vacant in Rockingham County.
The 5th column looks like it could be monthly rents.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense that it would be number of vacancies.
It's gonna be bedrooms.
So the purpose of this table is just to verify that there are no listed vacancies in Newmarket as of October, which was the most currently published data.
Anything else?
That's it.
before we do anything else, Diane, is a notice going out to abutters?
Yes, it has.
And you have the
I have the
mail
certified
slips?
mail slips, yep. I do.
At this point, I'm going to open the floor to public comment on the special exception application, and then we'll may ask you questions and come back after that.
Can
Any-
I believe that the variance is dependent, the variance needs to be granted before the special exception.
Oh.
I believe so. Isn't that what we discussed earlier on?
That's kind of the way
Oh, did I get that wrong?
I don't know.
I think they should be taken up together simultaneously.
Okay. I apologize.
Because he doesn't meet the dimensional requirements,
Okay.
and implied in that is that he has to meet zoning in order to get the special use permit.
I see what you're saying. I apologize, I did this backwards.
It's okay.
So what we'll do is take up the variance and special exception simultaneously, and then address the variance first.
Correct.
So just a second, please, Mr. Nichols. In addition to the special exception, which we've heard a presentation on already, we will also simultaneously take up the public hearing for a variance reference section 3.03B of the Newmarket zoning ordinance. The applicant requests a variance to permit 7 residential units in a mixed-use building where 2.7 is allowed on a lot of 0.451 acres per density calculations in the M2 zone at 6 units per acre. The lot is located at 13 Water Street, tax map U3, lot 4 in the M2 zone. So, Mr. Nichols, if you want to proceed with your presentation, again, assume that we've read the package you've submitted and just hit the highlights that you think are important from your point of view.
Okay.
And then we'll take up the variance. Open the floor for public discussion of the variance application, or both applications, really.
Okay. The current zoning determines the number of allowed units, residential units based on density. And that is number of units per area or per acre. Based on the current zoning requirements, we would be allowed 3 units. But then there is a special requirement for M2 districts for mixed-use developments that reduces residential density by 1 unit. So that would reduce our allowed density to 2. Total development. We're proposing 7 units, so an additional 5 to what would be allowed with a special exception. The one thing that we really looked at as part of this development is not so much the residential density, but the density of the building footprint as it relates to the property. So with 7 units, we've got a density of less than 16 units per acre, which by urban standards is significantly lower than what's normally seen. We looked at 4 other buildings within the neighborhood and on Main Street, and the densities range all the way up to 232 units per acre. So based on the urban setting, the downtown area, and consistent with mixed-use development, which incorporates a significant amount of residential density as part of the mixed-use development, we believe that 7 units is consistent with best practice in the existing urban area. Another thing to note, just to the north of our property, is the M1 district. We abut the Rivermore property, which is the M1 district. So if essentially the district were moved 1 lot south to include us, we would be allowed 9 again, we think that's consistent with the area. And the last note, there was precedence, which may or may not be allowable, but we asked that be considered precedence for the existing landowner to construct a 7-unit, all residential building on that lot within the same location, roughly the same footprint. And that was approved by the ZBA in either 2005 or 2006.
I just wanted to clarify for the board that that 7-unit variance was for new construction.
Yes.
There was also a variance granted for mixed use, or was it 5 units, and the commercial that was issued 2 years before was also granted by the zoning board, but that was for an adaptive reuse, rehabilitation of the existing building.
So why wouldn't that apply?
Because it's a different application,
It's a different application.
and it's on a different footprint.
It's on a different footprint.
And he's talking mixed use, new construction, as opposed to mixed use rehabilitation. I think it's a major difference.
That was just rehabilitation before,
Correct, the mixed use was rehabilitation.
5 years ago.
Right.
There were 2 separate prior applications.
That is correct.
There was a commercial application for adaptive reuse, and then 2 years after that, there was a 7-unit residential
Correct.
proposal.
Right. The first one was a mixed use commercial
First one was
residential.
mixed use.
Do either of those previous decisions impact or obligate the board in any way?
I don't think they.
No, but the significance of it is that you can't apply for the same variance twice, so there is a difference
Gotcha.
between the variance applications
This
that
is-
warrants him to come and present his case.
This is a different applicant.
It's a different applicant, different application, and a different footprint,
And different type of use.
and different types of uses. right.
I would think of it as evidence that you might consider or reject, but I don't think we're bound by it.
No, you're not bound by it, but it's just information
Yeah,
to
so I
show
just
some
wanted to clarify.
precedents in the past, whatever.
Yes, sir. Did you have anything further?
I didn't, no, unless you have questions.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing on both the variance and special exception applications. So anyone who would like to address, yes, sir, please. Just please state your name and address for the record. So that-
Rob Phillips, I'm representing the condo association of Rivermore,
Yes, sir.
and you might recall that I was in before at the previous meeting. Just to get clear on what the process here tonight is about, there was a prior meeting in, was it October 10th? September.
September.
And so now we're having another hearing. It's on, I guess the first variance wasn't sufficient or something?
That is correct.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
And he was aware of that. I mean, he knew that he had to come back to the board.
okay, but the things that were discussed and said at that meeting, do they have to be restated at this meeting, or do they continue from the previous meeting? Do you recall all the prior discussions, et cetera?
No, what happened at the previous meeting was he needed what you might call an area variance to move the building or part of the construction into the setback, closer to the church, in essence. This is what is sometimes called a use variance. He's not changing the footprint. He's asking for.
So the footprint's been approved?
Well, he's been given,
Setbacks.
he's been
Setbacks have
given
been approved.
the setback. Yes, the variance for the setback.
And the setbacks kind of determine the footprint, doesn't it?
Right.
Okay.
So he's not here tonight talking about the footprint again.
Right, good, okay.
He's here tonight talking about,
So I guess what I would add is two things. One is the question of previous variances. Both of those obviously were for smaller buildings, different circumstances. So I don't know much what you want to attribute to them. But as it relates to what we talked about in September, we believe that to the extent that you are approving a footprint that's 4-story building, certain size, certain square foot, we believe the more residential you have in there, the better. That's our belief. It remains our belief.
Could you speak up, please?
What he said is that from their point of view of Rivermore,
From
the
Rivermore,
more residential
just
use in
Rivermore.
the area, the better.
If the building's gonna be X amount of stories and square foot, we believe that it does better being residential. In fact, we had advocated 3 stories of residential, not 2. You know,
You'd have to come in for another variance for that.
yeah, right, and we're not, right, and I'm not, just so you'll know, that's the perspective that we've developed around this, and the reason I asked about September is because you all know, in our viewpoint, the reasons were traffic issue, parking issue. We think residential is the lower demand. In fact, you know, when you do your parking calculations, you always presume that residential is the least amount compared to commercial, and I think for good reason. So we would just restate that, and you know, I just needed to clarify what exact issue we were taking up at this meeting. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, Skip. It's nice to see you again, Skip.
Thank you. Good to be here. My name is Leo Skip Mansell, and I'm here representing the Newmarket Community Church. I was asked by, I am a voting member, but at present I'm not on any of the boards, but I was asked to come this evening because there was members here at the last meeting, about the last application, and they couldn't be here tonight. So they asked me to be here. So if I may, a little indulgence on just bringing me up to date. I know that there was some relief given to the sideline setback, which would be, I believe, to the rear, to the rear of the church, on what would be the back boundary of the church property.
That's correct. And our
The
I've
parking
not
lot
seen
side
this
also.
plan, so.
Yeah, essentially, the setback that we had requested relief on started at about this point and then ran back, so it was essentially a pie-shaped section of that portion right there.
And the issues that drove the discussion back then, Skip, to the best of my memory, was, first of all, fire safety, access for firefighting to 3 sides of the building. And the applicant had a letter from Chief Molaski ultimately saying that he was satisfied with the plan as presented. And there was concern about light. The building's moving closer together. The building does meet the height, is less than the, he didn't need a height variance.
Is that a 2-story building there?
It's going to be 4, but it's going to start lower than the current building. Is that right?
Yes.
And it is 48, was it 48 feet?
And the
35.
35.
Part of what makes the lot kind of unique is he's sandwiched between the right-of-way for the Riverwalk, there's a sewer main that goes through the area.
Yeah.
So he can't really slide the building down to accommodate. The only place that he really had any latitude to move was a little closer to the boundaries. So.
Yeah.
So on the river side, it's 4 stories high,
Yes.
and on the church side, it's how tall? How many stories?
There's 4 parts to the building. The main building and the portion to the west, which abuts your property, are 4-story. And then the 2 to the north and south are 3-story.
Okay.
So actually, this is probably better.
And when this was presented, the use of the building was to be what?
Mixed use.
Mixed use?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, nobody truly understood what it was at the church, so
Oh.
I was trying to get that information, and they really couldn't tell me what the use of it was. So
Yeah.
I was, because my question was, you know, if this is the chicken and the egg, if needed a sideline setback to accommodate the size of the building, there must have been a proposal for the building for its use. So, And now we're looking at trying to get some relief for the numbers of units, which is a density business, and ultimately, as the gentleman earlier from Rivermore said, you know, footprint denotes size of building and ultimately numbers of units. So I was trying to get clear on that, since clearly the building's larger now that it has relief from that setback. So, and I'm not throwing stones or anything else, I'm just trying to understand the thing and talk out loud a little bit.
Mhm.
I did make a couple of notes. Since so now it's not a mixed use, it's all residential condominiums?
No, sir, it is still mixed use, Skip. The design intent, as I understand it, is the bottom floor is some kind of commercial use. I don't know if a restaurant is envisioned. Mr. Nichols' business will occupy the second floor, and the third and fourth floors will be residential. That's the vision, as I understand it, as we sit here today. Is that basically it?
How many square
You
feet?
might look at it as retail first story, commercial second, residential third and fourth.
Sure.
That might be the most accurate way to look at it.
Sure.
And it won't just be one tenant on the second story, it could be any number. Could be a couple.
Be your own use plus somebody else's?
Yeah, it'll be our office,
Mhm. Plus somebody else on that.
plus
on that
other
plus-
professional office tenants.
How many square feet altogether?
Total footprint is around 5,000. Total building square footage is a little over 18,056, I believe.
Yeah, so those residential units, there's 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms?
Yes.
About how large?
They range from around 1,100 to 1,200 square feet.
Pretty substantial.
I made a note here, what has changed, but I think you answered that, Diana, because of the previous requests back 4 or 5 years ago. So if they're condos and they don't sell in a reasonable time, you're gonna have to rent them?
Possibly.
And you think, based upon the present numbers, that those 17 bedrooms would produce about 1.7 children or 2 kids?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't really disagree either. Because if your market is young professionals, it's probably reasonable that there wouldn't be a lot of children. Although the three bedroom units, if you're renting them, might attract some children. I don't have anything against children. So, the biggest issues that the folks at the church had were, that's the sunlight side of the building, and the back of the church, those are educational classrooms on the back of the church, so they have some concern, but the biggest concern is fire and proximity to the building if something gets going there. Would this building be sprinkled?
You have to be by code.
I would imagine, yeah. Yeah.
We were very concerned about this, Skip, and spent some time kicking this issue around, and
Yeah, and I don't mean to belabor it.
No, that's
I
fine.
just, I
But
know
I wanna-
it was gone through, I'm just trying to get up to
Yeah.
speed, that's all.
No, I want to give you some assurance that we were extremely conscious of that issue.
Is the exterior finish on the building, is that a brick building?
Yes. It'd be a thin brick.
So it's thin veneer?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it a steel frame or wood frame?
Mostly steel, some wood.
Steel stud with some type of insulated sheathing and then the brick veneer?
Yes.
The thin brick?
Yes, and the structural design isn't complete yet. It may end up being all steel, or it may end up having, some timber walls, but primarily it'll be a steel supported structure.
So the overall height on the church's side of the building, because it's a mansard roof.
You kind of see it scaled there, that top right
Yep,
hand.
yep.
I think we were talking about it being as tall as the church, was it that?
So you got a flat roof on top of that mansard?
Yes, with, in this concept, we have PV panels, solar panels.
Yep.
That's what you're seeing there.
Yeah, okay.
The roof that would extend toward the church is gonna be a flat roof, so it won't protrude quite as high. But
There's a, I'm just looking at this right here. It's a good-looking building. There's a curb cut there that exists now with a granite curb that, as you come down Water Street, winds into the parking lot that exists here now. And so the rear lot corner of the church is actually in the middle of that asphalt. Because I've done a little bit of research on the plan, on the church's site plan, and it appears to be a straight lot line in the back as you've depicted it on your plan there. But there's a radius that comes across the church property right there, and the pin is actually out. At one time, I could show you where that was, but it is under the pavement there, so that when the downtown was redone, they wound that granite curbing on a radius there, which actually went across the church property. So I just don't want anybody to have any misconceptions about where that property is, that's all.
Yeah, and in this concept, that driveway will be gone.
Right, I
There'll
see
be
that
all
now.
new granite curbing there with a sidewalk.
That's all I got for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Skip. Anything further from the public? Yes, sir. Please step forward and state your name.
Mark McKenzie, 6 Washington Street.
You're gonna have to speak up to be able to be heard on the mics, please.
Barton McKenzie, 6 Washington Street.
Thank you.
I'm glad that property is something's going to happen to it. It's too bad it's not, what was the word, adaptive use, because that's certainly one of the, I think it's even there in a shield conceptually anyway. Certainly one of the things that makes our waterfront picturesque, but I understand that there were issues with that as well. So I suppose, could you maybe bring down so you can see the outside of it? My associations with zoning variances, unfortunately, are with a building on the street. On the street, I can see it right outside my window, which is Spring Street, and a structure that was put up there with variances, a couple of different variances, I believe, which has changed the profile of that street drastically in a number of ways. And I know there was another instance of a request for a variance for a structure on Main Street, on Exeter Street, 108, recently, or in the past year, where they were asking for more units that were requested, and there were issues with parking there and whatnot, and it appears, if I wasn't able to make a meeting, that was denied in that case. So I'm a little concerned about proportions here, and I do want to remind the board that, I'm sorry, I missed your name. Tim mentioned urban space. This is in keeping with an urban space. It's a very specific urban space, obviously, here in Newmarket. As again, you look at our shield up there. So I think in terms of this side of the bay, we have to realize that is one of the most picturesque aspects of our town, and maybe ask ourselves how fitting a 4-story structure is in that space. I was hoping, could you explain again what the brick veneer is exactly?
It's essentially are you familiar with an ethos system? It's a super insulated system. We'll either have structural insulated panels or SIPs, or we'll have a ethos system that we'll build out. So one of the concepts of this building is that it'll be high performance. So the envelope will far exceed current code standards. So those type of systems get you much higher.
And what material is that made of? Brick?
It's
It's
clay.
real brick.
It's real brick.
Okay.
It's just a thinner veneer.
Okay.
So it has the appearance of a brick
Right,
building.
okay. So, that's the same as Rivermore. As I look at this, aside from the height and thinking it again, its impact on that half of our riverfront there, where there are no four-story buildings, I understand that they're, height-wise, it's a slightly different matter. The other concern I would have is with the balconies. And I'm wondering if, when you're measuring the setback, the allowable setback, if there is a setback affecting the front of the building, and if the balconies are included in that, are within that required setback.
There's no, to my understanding, there is no setback requirement that applies to the front of this building,
Okay. So
because there's no abutting property owner on that
I
side.
see.
It's just the river.
All right, okay. So, I would just say, it's brick, which does go with Rivermore, 100%. But balconies, I'm not sure exactly, this may not be your business, but I will say, as I look at that, the balconies seem inappropriate, as certainly as presently constructed there. And I will just mention that. Again, reminding you that this is a crucial place in terms of Newmarket's identity and its attraction for people from elsewhere. I certainly have no problem with whether it's, whether we allow 7 residential units in there or fewer because of the footprint. But the fact that by adding those extra residential units while keeping commercial space and the retail space underneath means that it goes to 4 stories is of concern to me. And exactly how the larger impact on parking conditions down there with these extra units, when you consider that there's also commercial space, et cetera, down there, would, I suppose, be something that you'll consider in course. I suppose that's it. In terms of, I suppose in terms of the revenues of the town, I will speak as a town member and not a resident on the waterfront, that, obviously the commercial and retail space will be bringing in more income than with residential units. And with the mill building developing on the other side of the river there, it's not as if we're going to have, a paucity of a shortage of condominium units. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Skip?
Could I be heard again?
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I forgot one point, which was there was a fair amount of concern with the members of the church with the proximity to the foundation of the church building, which is a pretty old building.
Yes.
And there is a stairway that leads to the boiler room in the downstairs basement of the church along that property line. And there is a drain at the bottom of those open exterior stairway that goes down. And frankly, I have no idea where it goes. But it exits someplace because we don't get flooded. And that's a really good thing in an old building. We
Right.
did get flooded for years. Every time we got a really big rain, we got 6 inches of water in the basement.
Right.
With the exception of that boiler room, we never were bothered, but we did fix the north side of the building and put a new poured concrete foundation, single-sided foundation against our existing rock foundation.
Mhm.
And we were allowed to tie in that storm drain to Rivermore's. The folks at Rivermore, being good neighbors, allowed us to tie into the storm drain in the parking lot with just a 4-inch pipe that we used for a footing drain, and we've been dry ever since.
Mhm.
So that was a big thing, because that happened. It is a finished basement in the church, and it flooded in excess of 20 or 30 times. So
Mhm.
in any event, there is some concern about the closeness with the variance to allow closer setback to the building. There's some real concern about, what's in the ground, is it ledge, will there be blasting, is it marine clay?
Yep.
You know, all those types of construction issues and technical issues, so, and they had asked me to voice those concerns again, that if anything were to go forward, folks paid particular attention to that.
Yep, and Skip, I'll tell you that when we talked about the variance issue, this issue was raised as well.
Mhm.
And Mr. Nichols is gonna have to get a structural engineer to evaluate these issues and to get his
I understand.
insurance, so he's gonna have to get a
Yep.
stamp anyway.
Yep.
And he doesn't want the church to collapse either. So to the extent we have anything to say about it,
Mhm.
he's aware of the concern.
I just
I'm gonna
want-
let, I'm gonna let Mr. Phillips speak, because he had his
might
hand
be
up
about
first.
to say the same thing, and then the process goes to the planning board, site plan review, and in the site plan review process, yeah, so I see several people at the same time.
Yeah.
You get to make sure that they take into account the issues that you just raised, because it does get a little dicey down there. There's all sorts of things crossing over, and
Okay.
we all have those same concerns. I did want to ask one thing, if you would. Tim, I think, had made a presentation to the church, and so if that happened, I think maybe Tim could recap anything that you haven't raised, because you weren't at that meeting, and it doesn't look like they maybe communicated everything that they heard to you. That's all. So I don't know if that's...
Might not have understood.
Yeah, or might not have understood, or whatever. You're right. It's hard being the third party in, but, so I didn't know if maybe a recap from Tim about the church's concerns might be appropriate this time as well.
No, I understand the process. I was just
Yeah.
asked to bring that up again, so I appreciate your hearing me again.
No problem.
For the benefit of the public, I did want to announce that we are having a meeting, the planning board is having a meeting next Tuesday night. It's a design consultation with Mr. Nichols on his preliminary site plan application. And if you're interested and would like to come and see the presentation, hear the presentation, you're more than welcome to do so. I also,
At 7?
7.
that's at 7
Here.
next Tuesday night. I also wanted to mention that in the M2 district, there is a requirement for site plan review applications that there be a consideration of the facade of the building, and the planning board is to assure that there will be an aesthetic contribution to the heritage and visual qualities of the village. So
Yeah.
some of the concerns raised about, whether balconies are appropriate or not would be part of that review process.
Yeah, and again, our review as the ZBA is pretty narrow. It's pretty limited to what the statute and the ordinance permits us to consider. We don't make decisions about with parking and as a general matter, and about balconies as a general matter. Those issues, but I strongly encourage anybody who has any concerns to bring those issues to the attention of the planning board, who has a little bit broader scope of things that they can consider. Our scope, particularly on variance applications, is pretty narrowly limited to what the statute permits us to consider in terms of the public interest and the hardship that's imposed upon the applicant and things of that nature. But by all means, please bring your concerns to the planning board. They're happy to hear them in terms of design and issues of that nature. Any further public comment? At this point, I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing and open the floor, I guess, for questioning by the panel.
I've got one general question about the M2 district. Why they've got it at 6 units per acre when the downtown is obviously developed quite a bit higher than that.
I think the underlying concern is, there's a reference to a current overabundance of multifamily housing, and maybe they were just trying to keep that, give future ZBAs an opportunity to consider that issue. That's only surmise.
Mm-hmm.
So the M2 starts here.
It's a little bit difficult to tell from
This
this.
is what I want to see.
I have a
I
larger
think it's this
scale map.
purple.
Yeah.
This is, if I might, this is the Rivermore property here.
Oh, there you go. That's perfect. Try that one.
Yeah. So that is M1.
So M2 is, this is M2 here.
So he must be
This is
lot
Rivermore.
one. Is he lot
Sprints?
one?
I think he's lot 4.
Lot 4, correct.
Yeah, he's,
Adjacent, yeah.
And that, if I understood it correctly, the evidence presented here would suggest that if he was part of the mill district, he would
You
be
wouldn't have to
compliant.
require higher density.
Be compliant with his
Well,
proposal.
the density ordinance is what it is.
Right.
You just have to
If
deal
it was
with it as
M1,
it
he'd
is.
have to
Right.
get a conditional use
That's,
permit.
that's what I got out of that.
Different.
But it is,
if that,
it's a higher standard. It allows
that
greater.
zone had extended into this property, it would be compliant.
Correct.
Correct. But then you gotta watch it because you get into a slippery slope.
Right.
But-
But that's one of the
Well, if it's
points
just there
that-
next door, then the one next door to that, and the one next door to that, and pretty soon you don't have an M2 zone.
But it wouldn't be out of character.
Right, I understand, I appreciate, it's consistent with the spirit, you might say.
Okay, all right, okay.
I understand what you're saying.
But that it is interesting that the zone lines don't change, say, at Main Street, so that he essentially is being asked to conform with things, the more single-family and small multifamily that's on the other side of, you know,
Yeah, there's
of of 108.
Looking at it, there's no obvious distinction.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
There's not a separate character of the neighborhood
Right.
where, on one side of the street.
And the conceived of the proposed use is not completely out of character with what the intent of the zoning is, unlike when Lane Cheney brought in his project, it specifically excluded residential in the purpose. So the purpose is still consistent.
Could I ask Tim a question?
Certainly you can. I don't know if he'll answer it, but you can ask him.
Just so I understand it, Tim, the first floor is gonna be some sort of retail, commercial, how many units approximately?
3 right now.
3. The second floor will be your offices plus how many others?
About 3 professional offices.
4 total?
Right.
Okay. And then on the second and third floor, there will be 7 residential units.
Third and fourth.
I'm sorry,
Third and fourth.
third and fourth. 7 residential units. Approximately average square footage of what?
1150 square feet.
Okay. Okay. Oh, it's all on here.
Yeah, it's there.
It's really tiny.
Oh.
Really?
You have to have a magnifying
Yeah.
glass to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, Wayne? Are you-
Yes, oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought-
No,
I was
I'm all
waiting for
set.
you to finish.
I'm sorry, I'm all set.
Anything further from the board? You all set? Bill?
I'm all set.
Bob?
I can't.
Anybody opposed to a motion?
No. We can put a motion on the floor, we can continue to discuss it if necessary.
Sure. So I'd like to make a motion, so, to grant,
Taking up the variance first.
yes, the variance, make sure I get the right one here. All right. To grant a variance to Akity Engineers and Constructors, reference section 3.03 Bravo of the Newmarket zoning ordinance, reference residential density, and
to allow a variance to permit 7 residential units in a mixed building where 2.7 is allowed on a lot of 0.451 acres per density calculations in the M2 zone at 6 units per acre. Lots located at 13 Water Street, tax map U3, lot 4, M2 zone. Based on the information or evidence provided in the packet, and in addition, the testimony provided by the gentleman from Rivermore.
Second.
Suggest something for, this is a mixed-use development, and under the section of the ordinance that pertains to mixed-use developments, the density is actually 1 unit less than what's normally required. So in this case, it would be 5 units. I just wanted to make that clarification.
So it's a variance for 5 additional units, a total of 7 units. That's the point you're making?
That the permitted density
Right,
for
instead of the
this
2.7.
mixed use is
Got it.
not 6 units per acre, it's 5 units per acre. That's the point I wanted to make.
Okay. Understood. Modified as noted.
Thank you.
However that gets typed up.
Second that.
Well, I just want to say that, for purposes of the record, that I think that a strong showing has been made on the evidence presented of, that the variance criteria have been satisfied. This is a unique property in a unique and important area of town in terms of both economic value and aesthetic value. And I was found particularly compelling for my part the fact that this property is very much constrained and made unique in my view by the presence of the easement, which constrains the ability to move the building really in any direction effectively, combined with the setback requirements and the simple size of the lot. And then bearing in mind that there's the sewer force main that goes right through the property as well. And in my view makes this property unique, probably unique in all of Newmarket, in my view. So I'm satisfied with the evidence presented that the criteria of the variance have been satisfied. And if no one has any further comment, I'm happy to move the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Now we'll take up the special exception application. I should probably make clear that my intention was that the public hearing was closed on both the variance and special exception applications. That was certainly my intent if I didn't make that clear. I'm happy to entertain a motion on the special exception application, then we can take up further discussion if necessary.
Make this one as well. Motion for IKD engineers and constructors to grant a special exception reference section 2.02 Bravo 2 of the Newmarket zoning ordinance. The applicant requests a special exception to permit multifamily residential use on this lot in the M2 zone. Lots located at 13 Water Street, tax map U3, lot 4, M2 zone, based on information and evidence provided in the packet provided by proposer.
Second again.
Further discussion? Might have been a little bit happier if Newmarket specific data had been presented, but
I got a little lost in some of the financial impact stuff because it was drawn from general New Hampshire data and national data.
yeah. But from my
I
experience,
think we could have gotten the information you needed.
oh, you sure?
Well, I think short of surveying other condominium developments in the area, you're not going to get more specific data provided on the town level at this point.
I was thinking more of the school data, because that data is available. Mr. Manso and I helped compile it about 5 years ago, and I know it's out there, but this is consistent.
Yeah, I agree.
This is consistent with what that data
Reasonable
is, so
number.
I'm not that fussed about it. The impact of school children for multi-residential units is often overstated. It's not as great as is typically thought to be in Newmarket specifically.
And I believe the Newmarket experience shows that the higher end units even have less of an impact on and school-age kids, so that's perfectly consistent with what I've observed.
So if there's no further comment or discussion, happy to move the vote this time. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Any new business or old business to take up?
I have some new business.
Please, Sam.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You don't have to go home and you don't have to stay, but you're welcome to stay.
I just want to thank you again for your time.
Good luck.
I appreciate it.
Well, we're kind of feeling our way through here, so I'm glad you were patient with us and took the time to prepare some good information. Made our
Don't forget, you still got the planning board process to go through, and the first vote was conditional. So we may be seeing you again.
One step at a time.
One step at a time, and baby steps. Diane, you're...
We received an inquiry today from someone who's interested in the zoning board application at 32 Huckins Drive. And Sue is going to poll the board members to see when they might be available for another meeting. This is a variance to the criteria for being able to encroach upon the 25-foot wetlands buffer in order to build a stone retaining wall. And they want to come in the next couple of weeks. I don't know how that might
Before the holidays?
coincide with your holiday plans. So I wanted to throw it out to you to see if you're available,
Well, I know
or if I
the-
should, we should
I know the
encourage him
property
to
at
come
32
in.
Huckins Drive.
Right.
I know the Valinskis. And,
There,
Curious.
on the right-hand side of their property, there's kind of this natural, well, actually, it's not natural, it's a drainage way. There's
Yeah,
a
it's a
culvert that
swale.
goes underneath
Thank you very much. Good night.
Huckins Drive.
Good night, Skip. Nice to see you.
Good night, Skip.
Thank you, Skip.
And there's some definitely wetlands in back. They've had
Yes.
GZA out to delineate where the wetlands boundaries are. They've actually flagged the area. And he will
Seen
be
the flags.
disturbing an area within that 25-foot buffer. They've gone to the the Conservation Commission. They've reviewed it with an eye to whether or not it would be eligible for a special use permit. But they didn't feel that there was enough room on the site to come up with some kind of mitigation plan. So their advice was basically that if they wanted to seek further relief, they had to come to the zoning board for a hearing. So.
The point is they want to do it before the end of the year.
No, they don't. He's not that anxious. He said you could go, wait until
Well, you
after
can't-
the end of the year. We have to notify abutters anyway.
We're on the edge of construction season anyway, so on the very edge. It won't take long enough for things to freeze up.
I don't think there's real urgency for you to get it done quickly. I mean, you have to notify abutters, so it's at least a 10-day period from that.
I would say that if Mr. Valinsky wants to come in, or Ms. Valinsky, or the Valinskis want to come in.
It's actually their contractor, a gentleman by the name of Scott Cullinane.
Okay.
Or
Well,
Adam
whatever.
Cullinane, excuse me.
If they want to bring in an application and they urgently want us to take it up,
They don't.
then
They
we'll
said they're-
try to accommodate them. If not, then.
I just wanted to give you a heads
January.
up that it's coming, and that we'll try to schedule it for January.
Yeah.
Okay. And I
Do it
think
in-
Sue is gonna send you an email, I don't know if she's done
I
that.
think the 8th is the first Monday. I think New Year's Day is a Monday.
Sunday.
Oh yeah, let's have it on
Sunday.
New Year's Day.
So let's do it on the 9th.
We'll do it on? That's
Fine.
fine, that's fine, okay. Decision made?
I don't have my brain, so. I'll have to
What are
write it
Yes,
down.
January 9th, Monday, January
What are our
9th.
authorities when it comes to wetlands? How does that work?
Um,
It's state.
This is
That's
in
not part
addition
of
to
our-
state requirements.
Yeah,
The state
it's
doesn't have
still-
jurisdiction over wetland buffers per se.
Okay.
But our local ordinance does provide, oversight for that
So
area.
it's just a variance to our local ordinance? though?
Right, because they
Okay.
can't meet the requirements.
If a state permit is
Mitigation
required, he's
plan.
gonna have to get a state permit regardless of what we do.
Right.
Mhm. But he's not altering the wetland itself,
not
it's just the
altering the
buffer.
wetland.
So he's not subject to state.
The different towns have different wetlands buffers.
Mhm.
The site is very tight.
I know it is. And they're talking fairly large amount of fill. I mean, the yard slopes
Yeah,
down like
it's
that.
difficult.
And, I I think from a planning perspective, we just want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the natural drainage.
Yep.
And that, you know, at the end of the project, at the end of the day, it's going to drain properly and there's not going to be erosion.
Yeah, we're not-
Now, listen, the only.
Well, wait a minute now, we're not taking up the application.
No,
All right,
no,
sorry.
no.
January
The
9th.
only thing I have, you just hit upon something. The only thing I would suggest then is perhaps we should look at it before then.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
Yeah.
it's an easy drive-by. You
It
can see the
is?
flags.
You can see it right there.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can
It's
see
all
the
flagged
flags.
and everything? Okay.
Yeah, I
Then
drive by it
would
every day.
encourage everybody.
I live on Huckins
Rather
Road.
than a site walk or anything, because
Yeah,
obviously January 9th, it'll probably be covered with snow.
And I do have a memo from the chairman of the Conservation Commission that I can provide when he
Right.
had to submit it.
yeah, if they want to,
Go out from Alaska and check
if you're going to contact them, or Sue's going to contact them, maybe ask Joe to maybe ask him to take a couple of pictures before, in case it
Good.
snows.
Yeah.
What's the address on it again?
It's 32 Huckins Drive.
Huckins.
It's the last house in the circle as you go around in the correct direction,
And what's the correct direction? Clockwise?
anti-clockwise.
Okay.
It's got to be a local.
It's one way.
Anti-counterclockwise.
Yeah, that is.
Any other new business?
That's it.
Any old business?
I don't know if this is new or old, but we do have a new code enforcement officer.
Oh, really?
We do.
Yes, her name is Susan Labrie,
Oh, I met her
and
the
she
other
is
day.
taking Dan Benson's place. Dan has moved on to greener pastures up in Rochester. He's the head of
Oh,
the
when was
Where
that?
did he
That's
just
it.
get-
safety
Really?
department. You didn't know that, okay.
No, I just
Yeah,
saw
it's a
our
very small
interim
s-
guy leave Friday and I hadn't heard who was
Yeah.
coming in.
It's
Oh,
a small
Rochester.
state. I believe he started, or he's supposed to start this week, or.
Well, he hasn't,
But anyway.
didn't make the rounds today, I guess.
Okay.
Oh.
So anyway, the person who's
You
taking
get something?
Dan's position is Susan Labrie. She has experience as a building official. She worked for, I think, 10 years at the town of Bright, excuse me.
Terrific.
And so,
She's classmates with Phil McDonald and a few others.
oh, yeah. Yeah, she's
Phil
an engineer
McDonald.
by training and education. And,
You know
she-
Phil?
I know Phil.
And she's working same
Here.
schedule that Dan worked, 5
Doing the-
days a week.
working on the project here?
7 to
Main Street
12.
project, that's what it's his project.
He's a good guy.
Excellent.
When you're under pressure and you're out in the field and you gotta make a decision and stick by it and come up with the numbers, he's the guy you
Are
want.
we on camera still?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a closing meeting.
So, any
So
other
anyway, I
old
just wanted to
business?
announce that.
That's
So
terrific.
That's all I have.
Welcome, Susan, and we're gonna miss Dan. Any other old business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Uh,
Aye.